Hello and welcome to South Asia Focus. I am Smita Prakash. In this episode, we shall be focusing on the Indian Prime Minister's 3-day, 9-nation overseas visit. The Indian Prime Minister was in France, Germany and Canada. Here's a report.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Paris on April 9th, kicking off the first leg of his 3-nation 9-day tour with a schedule of attracting investments for the defence and nuclear power sectors. He received a ceremonial welcome at the Élysée Palace in Paris on his maiden Europe visit. Mr. Modi was escorted by French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius while inspecting a guard of honour. Mr. Modi also attended 2 roundtable conferences with French CEOs discussing infrastructure and defence technology as topics. He also addressed the UNESCO and met President François Hollande. While addressing UNESCO, Mr. Modi said that culture remained a source of conflict in many parts of the world and that it must be a tool to connect and not divide, in which UNESCO could play a pivotal part.
The fault lines in our world are shifting from the boundaries of nations into the web of our societies and the streets of our cities. The threats are changing from domination by states to destruction by groups. We fight today not only over what we claim, but also for who we are. And in many parts of the world, culture remains a source of conflict.
He later added that UNESCO's initiative to preserve and protect the world's heritage was inspirational and that India saw its own culture as humanity's wealth and did everything to conserve it for the coming generations. Later, Prime Minister Modi also enjoyed a boat ride with French President Hollande on River Seine in Paris, which was described as a nav pe charcha or chat on boat. The talking point of Prime Minister Modi's stay in France was of course the Rafale Dassault fighter jet deal. The plan to buy 36 planes from Dassault was finally announced, and that also through the government-to-government route. This came after almost 3 years of price negotiations for local assembly of the aircraft, which did not make much headway. In the original proposal, Indian Air Force was to buy 126 Rafale fighter jets. Of those, 108 would be produced at a state-run Hindustan Aeronautics plant in Bengaluru, but the two sides could not come to an agreement. Mr. Modi also visited the French Space Centre CNES, or the National Centre for Space Studies, to examine cooperation in space research with France and also paid a visit to the Airbus facility in Toulouse. He also met Airbus Group Chief Executive Officer Tom Enders and Airbus Chief Executive Fabrice Breger, who along with other employees took Mr. Modi around the facility. Earlier this year, Airbus Helicopters, a subsidiary of the Airbus Group, had said it was in talks with Indian companies to jointly make military helicopters. Under Mr. Modi's Make in India initiative, foreign contractors who used to sell directly to New Delhi must form partnerships with local companies and transfer more of the work to help spruce up India's defence industry. After France, Prime Minister Modi headed for Germany, where he met Chancellor Angela Merkel and inaugurated the Hannover Messe, which is the world's largest industrial technology fair. About 400 Indian companies took part in this annual fair, where top-notch technology and innovation was highlighted. It brought together the world's leading industry players. Speaking at the inauguration, Mr. Modi said India was now ready to embrace the whole world.
Today, I come to seek German partnership in my own mission to open up India's seamless economic potential. To the industry of the world that has assembled here today, I say that we have no special bias for our host today. India is open and ready to embrace the whole world.
Mr. Modi also said he was depending on the country's youth population to achieve his vision of turning India from a country of IT professionals, security guards and low-paid chauffeurs into a manufacturing and export powerhouse through the Make in India program. Earlier in the day, the Indian Prime Minister had met top German business leaders to promote his Make in India campaign. He held a roundtable meeting with various business leaders, including President and CEO of Voith Paper Inc., Dr. Hubert Lehnhardt, the President and CEO of Bombardier Transportation, Dr. Lutz Bertling, and CEO of Daimler AG Dater Zetz, among others. Speaking about the meeting, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Syed Akbaruddin said Prime Minister Modi focused on seeking the business leaders' views on how to develop ease of doing business in the country.
He did indicate that there is a monitoring mechanism in place for reviewing ease of business in India. He did indicate that he himself was keen on pursuing this, and he assured the business, German business, that they will see significant changes as time progresses, because he's now laid out the framework and he is now into the phase of implementation of that framework.
On April 13th in Berlin, Prime Minister Modi addressed the Indian community, where he stressed on India's need to become the world's manufacturing hub by enhancing skill of the youth of the country. On his last day in Germany, Prime Minister Modi and German Chancellor Angela Merkel issued a joint statement where both pledged to push for greater and aggressive cooperation to combat global challenges. Chancellor Merkel also said that terrorism was a major challenge, and like other countries that are facing this threat, Germany is also developing policies to combat it. Mr. Modi said that economic momentum in Europe was important for the global economy and that European stability was critical for global peace. On the last leg of his tour, Prime Minister Modi landed in Ottawa, Canada on April 15th, where he was welcomed by Canadian Defence Minister Jason Kenney and other officials. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper hosted Mr. Modi and both discussed different issues including trade, energy, environment and security. Later, in a major development, both announced the signing of a 5-year uranium supply deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Canada's Camco Corp had signed a $280 million 5-year deal to supply uranium fuel to Indian nuclear reactors. Canadian Prime Minister Harper congratulated India for the deal.
The untapped trade potential between our countries is enormous. Canada has what India needs, and vice versa. To that end, I'm pleased to note that Cameco will supply Saskatchewan uranium for India's atomic energy program over the next 5 years.
Mr. Modi said that uranium deal marked the beginning of a new and vibrant era in the trade relations between both nations.
The agreement on procurement of uranium from Canada for our civilian nuclear power plants launches a new era of bilateral cooperation. It also reflects a new level of mutual trust and confidence. Further, it will contribute to India's efforts to power its growth with clean energy.
The deal is Camco's first with India, which the company called the second fastest growing market for nuclear fuel. The Chief Executive Officer of the Camco Corporation, Tim Jitzel, expressed his delight over the new deal.
The agreement really covers about 7 million pounds of uranium over a 5-year period until 2020. First deliveries will be later this year. And then pricing is based on the market price for uranium, which is a published price at the time of delivery. So we'll see what that will be. I would say that the contract is worth hundreds of millions of dollars over the 5-year period.
Mr. Modi also visited Toronto, where he met Ontario Premier Kathleen Wayne and Leader of Opposition Liberal Party of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Both Mr. Modi and Mr. Harper paid tributes to the victims of the 1985 Air India plane bombing that claimed 329 lives. The Indian Prime Minister also visited a Sikh Gurdwara and the Lakshmi Narayan Temple in Vancouver before returning to India. According to the Indian External Affairs Ministry, Mr. Modi's tour was a successful one and that his focus was on linking the West to the developmental needs of India, and that had been achieved.
This was the longest overseas visit of the Indian Prime Minister since taking office 11 months ago. In all his interactions with business leaders, heads of state and government, the Indian Prime Minister has been talking about how he wants to reduce red tapeism and he wants to give a red carpet welcome to anybody who wants to come and do business in India. The Indian Prime Minister quite clearly showing that he's a man in a hurry who wants to project himself and the country as something that is going forward into a path of reforms, economic reforms. Thank you for watching South Asia Focus. I'm Smita Prakash in Vancouver.